We're here with Candace, and Candace, introduce yourself to us and tell us how this whole journey started for you.
Okay, good morning, Ken. Thank you so much for this opportunity. As you said, my name is Candace. It happens to be Candace Hayden. I live in the Michigan area. I received the Moderna vaccine on March 2nd and experienced just a sore arm the next day. And by March 4th, there was no indication that I'd even had a shot. And then on March 30th, I received the second vaccination and I experienced a sore arm. Both shots happened to be in my left arm. And the next morning, not only was the arm sore, but from this area all the way up to the ear, my entire neck was sore and I couldn't move my head left to right. I actually stayed at home from work because I wasn't able to drive because I couldn't look left to right. But by April 1st, all of that was gone. I will say, just from listening to other people's experience, the first shot I did experience numbness and tingling in my face and in my hands, but I shook it off. I just pretty much pulled over and said to myself, you know what? This is all in your head. Keep going. You're fine. So, anyway, on April 18th, which was a Sunday, I had a typical day. I went swimming, I went running, I did some gardening, went to dinner with a friend. At about 7 p.m., I was talking to my friend and I turned around to go into my house and I felt the weirdest, oddest pain under my left shoulder blade. And I kind of paused because it caught me off guard. But again, I shook it off and I went to take a step with my right leg and my leg buckled. Not enough for me to fall, but it was just enough for me to notice that something isn't right. I actually attributed it to running. I had run about 5 to 6 miles, and I'm thinking, I'm having some issue with running. So what I did is I just continued with walking into the house. I came in, turned on the TV, got my foam roller, which is what all of us runners do. We foam roll. And I literally watched television and foam rolled off and on till about midnight. And I think I'd also kind of drifted off to sleep. But anyway, it was midnight, and I said, you know what? Let me get up and go to bed. I proceeded to stand up, and the next thing I knew, I was back on the floor. And I thought that that was very weird. And I'm thinking, okay, was I asleep or what's going on? So I knew enough not to try to stand up in my living room because I don't have anything stable in my living room. So I literally crawled into my kitchen and I pulled myself up on the countertop, which is a hard surface. I got balanced and I went to step towards to leave the kitchen, and my legs buckled again. I caught myself on the countertop, but I also screamed, which woke my son up. And then I lowered myself to the floor because I knew I didn't have any legs. I literally looked down to see that I had legs, but they were not there. They were not functioning. I couldn't feel my feet. I couldn't feel anything from the waist down. My son comes, and I don't know why we didn't think to call EMS. All I told him is that I need to get to the hospital. And he tells me to wait a minute, and he comes back with some crutches, and I'm like, I can't use those. I had been gardening, so I told him to go and get these knee pads that I had. And I proceeded to crawl out of my house to get into the car. And I actually live on a hill, so everything in my house is stairs. So my son is saying to me, Mom, you can't do that. And I'm saying to him, but my legs, I have no legs. This is the only way I'm going to get into the car. So I literally crawled out of my house, down a flight of stairs, and pulled myself into the car. Don't ask me how I did it. And my son is looking at me going, I have no clue what you're doing, but he's, working along with me. And he took me to ER. So from there, this was a heightened time of COVID in our area. So I did get to have the experience of being put into a hallway. They ran some tests and nothing came back conclusive. So they wanted to do an MRI. And I had two choices. I could either be admitted into the hospital and get the MRI or be released to go home. and call at some point in time to get an MRI. And they had advised me that it would be quite some time before I would be able to get an appointment for an MRI. So, I mean, I quickly deduced that I probably want to stay in the hospital, especially since I still, at this point, have no legs. And from my chest down, is completely numb. I can't even feel it. I don't even know that those portions of my body still exist.
And that's true today.
And that's through that was about midnight. We would say the 18th, but actually the 19th. So from 7 p.m. on the 18th to midnight on the 19th, this occurred. And I can't tell you what this is. I just know that when I laid on the floor, obviously I had 2 feet and 2 legs to get there. And when I went to get up, I really can't explain the feeling when you have no legs. I just know that when I went to stand up, I immediately felt no pressure like on my feet, and to see it was like my legs did this, like they were just jelly, and there was nothing. And my brain is here, and I'm trying to connect to the part that, wait a minute, your legs should be working. I can only attribute it to if you took a baby and stood a baby up, and yes, their feet hit a solid foundation, but if you let that baby go, the baby's just gonna fall. That's how I felt. So anyway, back at the hospital, they scheduled me for an MRI and actually admit me. And I believe I got the MRI. It's anywhere from 24 to almost 30 hours after being admitted into the hospital. And not too long after that, a surgeon comes and tells me that there's nothing conclusive on my MRI. So as the surgical team, they would be removing themselves from my case and wish me luck. And I'm like, okay. So by this time, I've probably been in the hospital about 36 to 40 hours. And I've only seen these surgical people, and now they're telling me that there's nothing that they can do. I I can't give you the time frame, but an internal medicine doctor came in, introduced himself, and told me that he would be like my PCP, my primary care doctor, while I was in the care of the hospital. That they would keep my primary care doctor updated, and that he was on my case. But at this point, there was nothing that he could do. So again, I'm on my back and I'm hearing these things, but really nothing is resonating. I believe that doctor came to see me about 3 times over a 2.5 day span, telling me that there was nothing that he could do. And by the third time that he came, I'm not going to repeat my words, but I pretty much told him, don't come back until you have somebody that can do something for me, or transfer me out of here, because you've told me 3 times there's nothing you can do. We've established that. So find somebody who can help me. He left, and I'll say maybe 2 hours later, a neurologist showed up. And he came in with the command performance, actually did an exam of me, because prior to this, no one had actually touched my body. They'd taken blood and they looked at me as if I might have had some kind of disease that was making them back off. I'll just put it that way. But the neurologist comes in, he performs some tests, motion tests, along with feeling. And I will say that at this time, to touch me, I felt like 10 cats were scratching me if you just touched me. So all of these tests that he's performing, I'm trying not to be exasperated and also to overreact, but I mean, it's painful just for him to touch me, to even listen to my heart. It felt like a sharp object was sticking me in my chest. He gives me a look like I have no clue what's going on, but what I'm going to do is order an MRI and a CT. So throughout my hospital stay at the first hospital that I was in, I had a total of 6 MRIs, 2 CTs. Blood for the first 5 to 6 days was drawn on a daily basis, and some other blood test was being taken. I will say that all of my MRIs came back inconclusive for whatever they were looking for. For example, initially it was transverse myelitis, and the blood test was inconsistent. They did a CT of my heart with an angioplasty, and the only thing that I can explain, not being very medical here, if my lungs would have produced bubbles with this CT, it would have traced back to a blood clot, but there was no bubbles that were produced. I had MRI of my lower back, my upper back, my brain, twice for the brain and twice for the lower back, and nothing appeared on the MRI. All of my blood tests, every single thing that they tested for was negative. No MS. We also did a spinal tap. The spinal tap came back with no abnormal, with no. The spinal tap came back. The spinal came. Spinal. The spinal tap came back normal, and the final test that I have is something called a I'm sorry, the final test that I had was something called a TEE, which is a scope down your throat to examine your heart. And it came back, uh, my goodness, and it came back normal. In fact, the report read at the end that this patient has beautiful arteries. So once all of these tests were performed, neurology pretty much said, we don't know what's going on. We're going to back off and we're going to refer you to physical medicine, which was already part of my case. But right now, from the neurological standpoint, we can't tell you what's going on. We do have one other test that's been sent over to Mayo Clinic that's going to take 4 to 6 weeks to come back. And we hope that it comes back negative. And it was um, it was an autoimmune test, which, based on the neurologist, he says that everything else is tracking as positive from your blood work. So we're not expecting this test to come back and show that there is any abnormal. We're not expecting this test to come back and show us that there's anything autoimmune wrong with you. But again, we've run the test and it will take 4 to 6 weeks to come back. We're going to refer you to physical medicine and suggest that you have physical therapy. This was probably about day 6 to day 8. Um, I'll fast forward and tell you that I was in the hospital for a total of 26 days. And from that entire time frame, we still don't have a conclusive diagnosis as to what took place. The final diagnosis was GBS, and that was just so that insurance would pay for my hospital stay because I have to have a diagnosis in order to stay in the hospital for 26 days. So, what I can say is that, again, I'm numb from my chest down. I feel like a constant pincushion with electric shock going through my toes and my back. And that's constantly. I will say that while I was in the hospital, I was always asked about pain. And it wasn't until the end that I started to attribute this to pain because it's not painful, it's frustrating. Can you, I don't know if as a kid, if you ever took a 9-volt battery and stuck it to your tongue, that feeling, imagine that feeling all day, all the time. It's not painful. After a while, it just gets extremely frustrating and it gets annoying. That's the feeling that I have from my chest down to the bottom of my feet. When I move, that feeling intensifies and I start to feel like I have on compression stockings, but maybe 15 to 16 pairs of compression stockings that go all the way up to the top of my thighs. So as I move, my body starts to constrict and my back feels like a 50-pound weight is being placed on it. And as I move, it's like someone is just pushing this weight and pushing it further into my back. I don't have the full use of my limbs. My right side is more numb and experiences more weakness than my left side. And my midsection, feels like I have on a corset that someone, if you think about the corsets in the old days where they're actually strings, well, I feel like there's two people on each side and they're continually pulling on the strings so that the corset gets tighter. And that's how my midsection feels on a daily basis, every minute of the day. As I said, as movement increases, all of these sensations increase. Just to move from one room to another is, for a lack of a better word, it's just exasperating, because not only do I have the issue that I can't put one foot in front of the other like we walk, I also have these sensations that are going on in my body.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
So before all of this, I'm a 55-year-old woman who's extremely active. I like to say that I'm a triathlete. I participate in triathlons. I'm not there to win, but I'm there to participate, and I can participate in all three activities. Right now, I can't do any of that. I haven't fallen. I haven't had any recent injuries. As the doctors have said, you are healthier than most 55-year-olds. Before this, I didn't even take an aspirin, and I gotta say, I didn't even take vitamins. My health was not an issue. Was hospitalized for 26 days, and it's pretty, it's a, it's depressing to have something go on in your body that we can't even pinpoint what the issue is. The cause of this numbness, I don't have a cause. The cause of the compression and the feeling that someone is just pushing something into me, I don't have a cause. Um, it's been 56 days since this happened to me, and I was sent home from the hospital. The doctors pretty much wrote me off. The one doctor that was in charge of my case told me to get used to being handicapped, uh, which, excuse me, um, that didn't set well with me, because generally when something like this happens, you have a cause. You have a cause and effect. You just don't lay on the floor and go to get up and you can't move. And I also look to our medical community to be able to help understand what could have happened, and to help understand how to get me to the next point. I can't accept that I'm going to be handicapped for the rest of my life. I refuse to accept that. During my hospital stay, when we got to the point where there was no diagnosis, I started to ask questions of, could this possibly be a result from the vaccination? And I was quickly written off. Every doctor I talked to was like, there's no way it could be the vaccination. And I'm, standing there screaming, saying, but it's the only thing that I've done that was different. uh, I haven't had a heart attack. I haven't had a stroke. You can tell me all the things that I haven't had, but you can't tell me what I have had. And I can tell you that I've had the vaccination. So to me, it's the process of elimination. As I've told you, Ken, I am not against vaccination. I'm totally for it. But there are, and we know that there's a group of people, a small segment, that are experiencing these neurological anomalies. And unfortunately, we're just really being attributed to the fact that we're either anxious or crazy, which, again, two things that I refuse to accept because I know my body, and I know that there's something odd going on, but I don't know what to do about it. And as I told you before, I trusted science. And all I'm asking is for some type of recognition that we're still part of this experimental vaccination study, because we've proven that there could be an anomaly. And what I'm asking for now is just to include us in the test, include us in the study, find out why we are different, because there are some we's. And we also know that this is now affecting children. How far do we have to go, or who does this have to affect before it's recognized that there is a problem and that we, our voices should be heard? You know, personally, I think that there's a fix to this problem. But if we're never recognized, you can't fix something you don't know is happening. So if we're never recognized, that fix will never be found.
Okay, can I ask you a few questions?
You sure can.
Okay, thanks for sharing. I mean, that's quite a journey, and I can't even imagine, as you as an athlete, gone over medically in every which way they have, and coming out after a month, they tell you that they don't have any idea what's causing this.
And I will say the particular doctor told me that I could seek a second opinion. And he said, these were his exact words, but they're not going to find anything because there's nothing to be found. And that's when he moved on to tell me that I should just, get used to being handicapped. And I was mortified that again, a professional would even say something like that to me. And the fact that it was hopeless, that I would never find out what's wrong with me.
So here we are, about 3 months post your 1 month in the hospital. When did you, did you get to a place where you're like, nope, it's the shot?
So by the time the neurologist was on my case, I believe that by the second time that he came to see me, I asked him about the shot, and he told me that, oh no, it couldn't be the shot. And then I asked another doctor probably within that first 10 days, and they all told me that because it was, past 30 days, that, oh, by no means could it be the shot. I do recall, and I can't tell you the day number, but I started doing my own research, and I'm seeing that the CDC is saying 90 days you should report reactions. And that's why I went on and reported for myself on April 29th, while I'm still asking the doctors to report for me. Prior to being released from the hospital, 2 days, one doctor finally said, okay, well, we're going to report it. I honestly don't believe that they did, and there's really no way for me to find out. And the reason why he said, okay, we're going to report it, is I finally just said to him that he didn't have a right to decide for me what should be reported about me, that his job at this particular time, and I wasn't trying to discount him, but I felt that as a patient, I'm asking you to do something, and the only thing you should be doing is saying yes and shaking your head that that's what you're going to do. And quite frankly, I think he just kind of pacified me by saying, okay, we're going to do it. Again, unless there's some way that I can check it, I doubt very seriously if that hospital even moved forward to report my case.
So sounds like you got to the place where you're like, you don't know what's going on. We've had all these tests. I'm telling you, the only thing that I was totally healthy. What are your thoughts towards, how do you make sense of that?
So, it really started to become extremely frustrating. During this time, I had tracked down some news reports from the two ladies. There's one in Pennsylvania and one in Tennessee that had the very similar symptoms. And I'm talking to these doctors and I'm telling them about it and saying, I mean, it's on YouTube. You can go see it for yourself. And literally, two doctors kept telling me, well, every patient is different. So how can you attribute what you're going through to what, another person's going through? And I finally said to one of the doctors again, I mean, it's not rocket scientists here. I'm listening to a news report. What the patients are reporting are exactly what I've reported to you. And maybe if you just take a moment to go and look at it, you might understand why I'm saying that this may be also attributed to me. But again, I was completely discounted. So I was frustrated. I was, for, a lack of a better way to explain this, I was hurt that I wasn't even being considered, what I was saying wasn't even being considered. That because my doctors felt it had to be something else. Well, maybe I would have been more accepting that if you find out what this something else could be, but I'm offering you something else that I'm asking you to go and check out, and they wouldn't even consider that.
So you said frustrated. What most frustrates you about the process you've been through over the last 4 months?
Well, I had two things that were frustrating with my entire stay, and the biggest thing was that I wasn't being heard. That I was asking questions, or I'll put it this way. I, I believe for the first, I believe it was like 10 days, I pretty much was going along with the program. Again, I wake up and I'm not walking. So I went through some serious shock. I'm still not walking. I'm looking at a ceiling and I'm in a hospital with four walls and no window. So I pretty much felt like I was in prison or jail. And I was out of it. It wasn't drug induced. It was more like shock, like what is really going on? And at some point, after just hearing over and over, we don't know, I started doing my own research. I started, looking for things, started trying to understand what's going on with my body. And I felt that once I started using my voice and trying to advocate for myself, I was being shut down. And I was being shut down from the standpoint of, how dare you dispute us? And it's like, I'm not disputing you because you're not giving me anything to dispute. I'm just offering you another alternative that, as just a human, I'm expecting you to do something with the information other than tell me that, it can't be this. Because
Okay,
again, how
so
can you tell me it can't be this if you haven't checked it out?
okay, so you've done your own research. You got no answers from the weeks of examinations and tests to not be listened to when it's you.
So again, it was frustrating. It was aggravating. I do need to interject at this point that I'm literally laying on my back. I'm only getting up to do. I'm only getting up for personal reasons, and um, I'm now doing research and finding out anything that they've considered is my condition requires physical therapy. But yet I'm not receiving physical therapy. I'm receiving nothing. So I start to inquire about that. And I'm being told that the hospital that I'm currently in doesn't have beds and that the physical therapy unit is closed. So I start asking questions like, what do you mean you don't have beds? I don't need a bed. I'm in a bed. All I need is the services of physical therapy. And every diagnosis that you're offering me says that after 3 days of no movement, the the likelihood of this being reversed becomes less and less. So at this point, I know for sure it's like day 10 because I'm saying to the doctor, I have been here 10 days and you guys have done absolutely nothing. And now you're telling me you don't have a bed. Well, I don't need a bed because I'm in a bed. I'm in a facility that's got a state of the art physical therapy. Why can't you open the door, get a physical therapist in here, and we start to work? I mean, I don't understand that because right now you're giving me lip. You're not giving me service. So I continue to get a runaround in that area too. So not only am I frustrated, I'm now aggravated, and I'm also feeling like nobody is willing to help me, and that I've been caught in a system that doesn't care. That even I called the hospital advocate and I asked the person if they would come and see me, and she told me, no, we're going to do this over the phone. And that was my first red flag. So I tell her what I'm going through. And at the end of the conversation, she says that she was very sorry that I experienced what I was experiencing, and that I would receive a letter from the hospital. And I just hung up the phone and I sat there going, I don't have anybody that can help me. And during this time, we're in the middle of COVID. So I can't have anybody come in. I'm like by myself, and I'm hoping that even the food that I'm getting is good food, because at this point I'm lost. I am so lost. And a chaplain came and saw me and asked me if I had grieved, and I'm saying to him, "Man, I haven't had time to grieve. I'm in here fighting for my life. I even you have time to pray, because right now it's not the time to pray. All I know is to keep using my voice, keep screaming as loud as I can scream until somebody comes into this room that can help me. That's all I know right now." And I'm pretty much, I told the chaplain that if you're not here to help, you can go pray someplace else. I appreciate it. But right now, I need help. I need somebody that's going to help me with understanding what's going on with my body, that's going to provide me with the physical therapy that I should be getting. And let's start putting all these pieces together.
So
I know I'm going all over the place, but that's how I was feeling. And not to be able to walk and, get out of there.
so when did you leave the hospital?
So I left that hospital after 17 days. I was transferred to another hospital within the same group to start to receive physical therapy. And when I was at that other hospital from day 18 to day 26.
So how long have you after you got out of the second hospital, you came home? How long?
Yes.
How long?
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
How long have you been home?
I have been home 33 days.
Okay, so you've
I've been
been home
33.
basically a month.
Yes.
And what type of support do you have at home?
So that was another hospital interesting thing. I was told at the first hospital that an assessment would be performed on my house before they released me home. And the day that I'm being released, I'm asking the lady that's speaking to me about, what time are you going to be picked up and what have you. I'm like, so I'm supposed to go home, and who's going to help me? And she said, well, your support system. And I said, well, will I receive any aftercare? And the lady literally laughed. And I looked at her and I said, I don't see anything funny in here. I'm asking you a question because you're about to send me home. And if someone wasn't picking me up, what I feel is that you all would put me in a van, drop me off at the end of my driveway, and speed off as fast as you can, because this is like, I can't imagine this. So she apologizes for laughing and says, well, that's all out of pocket expense, and I can give you some phone numbers. And again, level of frustration. I just told her, you know what? I don't need your phone numbers. If all I'm going to get is phone numbers, I can do that for myself. So go ahead and ask me whatever questions you came in here to ask me, because I'm ready for you to leave. So my support system, I have a son, and a 26-year-old son who has been helping me as much as he can, but he also has a job. So I've pretty much been figuring this out on my own. I've had some friends. I was blessed that one friend was actually laid off for about 2 weeks. And before she went back to work, she could come by periodically and help me with things. But um, I will say that I was stuck in the frying pan, and I had to figure out a way to get out.
Jeez,
So,
yeah, get out from one frying pan, it sounds like, into
to
another.
another. So I will say 33 days ago when I came home, I was happy to be home, but I was also thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? I mean, how do I even feed myself? but I'm not there anymore. I've gotten strong enough that I can pretty much do everything in my house that I need to do. Um, and as I've shared with your wife, I really want to be able to drive because I am stuck. I am
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, the freedom that a that a car and driving give you. So you're breaking down. Do you have those moments? What are those moments like?
Oh, I have. I'm about to have one now. I have those moments quite a bit, uh, but I continue to tell myself that this too shall pass. That this is not going to be the end of me. Um, wow, those moments can be. Again, I'll go back to COVID. I had these moments during COVID. I really thought that this year was going to be a totally different year. Again, I am single, so I do a lot of things by myself, but I also do a lot of things in groups. So I'm so used to having someone around me that even in my darkest days, even if I'm not even going to talk about it, it's the fact that I have someone there. To be completely isolated, um, you have a lot of self conversations, and you have to remind yourself, as long as you don't respond and answer to your own questions, you're not crazy. And even when you start answering your own questions, you just have to hold on to that little piece that tells you that this is not how it's always going to be. I don't know the day or the time. I will say that every morning I wake up and I wiggle my toes just to see if that band of numbness is gone. And it's a little depressing that it's not, but I hold on to that thought that one day I'm going to wiggle my toes and be like, dang, wait a minute, and leap out of bed and be on my way to get on my bike.
Right. And if I had a magic wand, I would I would use it right now and make that happen. And yet, um, you
I
know,
was telling a friend that when all you know to be is strong, that's all you got. So I just got to stay strong. I truly hate it when somebody tells me that I'm strong, because what they're saying to me or what I hear is that you can do this. I'll just get over it, and that's not how it is. Um, you just have to continue to hope and pray that this is not going to be the end.
and yet, I mean, one of the things too that came to mind as you were just talking was, and I can only imagine putting myself trying to put myself in that space, right? Is that there must be times or thoughts of, holy crap, what the heck?
So, and I try to put everything in the days, but I don't remember. This was at the first hospital, and there was a day that I did not think that I was going to live. It wasn't because anything was going negative in my body. It was just all this uncertainty and the fact that if whatever has happened took me down to the point where I'm not walking. And at that time, they were trying to look at my heart, they're looking at my brain, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to make it out of here. So I actually called my best friend and asked her to come to the hospital, because you could have one visitor a day, and she had been completely vaccinated and gone through the 2 weeks. And I sat her down and gave her my will. And I actually recorded it so that my son wouldn't have to go through if I didn't make it. So that my son wouldn't have to go through what were my last wishes. And it wasn't the time to call him and say, hey, these are the things that I want done. But I asked my best friend just to, she didn't have to listen to me at that time because I was recording it. But if something were to happen to me, to go back over the recording and give my son the information that he needed to have. Yes, I have a will. Yes, I have a testament and all that other stuff. But if I were to die unexpectedly, and the fact that the last time he saw me, he was dropping me off at the hospital, I just wanted to have a message for him. I hated to put my best friend through that, but thank God I had somebody who I could talk to at that point in time. Uh, Do I still think that way? Yeah, there's days that I don't think I'm going to live past this, but I also go back to I haven't accomplished on this earth what I should be accomplishing. So the the resolve in me says that this isn't the end. But you know, we're human and we have brains that can go all off. So there are times that I don't know what the end is going to be, and I do think that maybe I'm not going to live past this. That one day they are going to find something, and it's going to be, you know, one of those chronic conditions that is that's the thing that takes me out. Um, I'm not I try not to hold on to that thought for long. I try not to hold on to that for long. But yeah, I actually went there. I had my girlfriend sit down and listen to my last will and testament, and that had to be grueling for her. But I thank God I had somebody that I could talk to.
I don't know whether it's people in the government, at the CDC, people in big pharma, the medical community, but if you could get who represents that group of people, and they were sitting in chairs before you, what would you tell them?
Generally, and this is just our lives and the way that we live our lives. Generally, when something happens to you, you can attribute it back to something that you did. And I, whether good or bad, but if there's something bad happen, we always can go find that one thing or several things that we've done to lead up to that. And I've had a lot of time to think. And I will say that this is the first time in my life that I've been in trouble, and I can't pinpoint what it was that I did to cause this. And I say that in what I did as in something negative. I've only done something positive, which was to take the vaccination that is positive, that's saving lives. But I happen to be one of maybe 1% or 2% that's not experiencing this the way that it was planned out to be. And I get that. I totally understand that. But I would say to those that would be listening to me at that time, and thank God they would be listening, that I wouldn't even put this up on an enemy. If I had an enemy that I truly hated, and I don't hate anybody, but if there was somebody that I truly hated, I wouldn't give this to them. And I would say to them that what you don't want is that one family member that's like me, that we don't know what that is. What you don't want is for that one family member to become like me because all they did was take the vaccination. Because I totally believe, Ken, that if we just put some time into this, I am not a medical doctor. I happen to be a doctor of management, and I understand the power of research. Research solves everything. And if we can just put together some of the commonalities, we will come up with the solution, or at least a template to say that if these are the things that you experience in life, maybe you should just stay masked up and don't get this vaccination. We need to do some more research and we'll come up with another formula for you, but you're going to be excluded from this. You know, the other thing that I would tell those who are listening to me, that even if we go to another step and we have to, let's say, have a booster, well, I'm not going to be in that line for the booster. But if we start using these vaccinations as a means to give people privileges, I'm going to be excluded from something because I'm refusing to go through this again. If I get out of this, trust me, I'm not going back into it willingly. So think about that family member, that loved one that you're going to have to stand and face and say, well, I'm sorry, you're no longer eligible to do this or to do that, because now you won't get vaccinated because you've had this experience and we haven't moved forward to provide the research along with the, maybe not a solution, but also, but maybe a template of these are the things that you should do. I mean, there's a group of us. We don't even have a template of what we should do. We do know there's a whole bunch of medications we shouldn't be taking because they're not doing anything, but we don't have a template of this is what you should do, or these are the things that you're going to experience. So that in 6 months, when I'm totally healed, we can say that at month 2, these are the things you're going to experience. At month 3, this is what you're going to experience. And hey, all you got to do is look out 6 months and life will be back.
The medical community, the doctors want to kind of ignore what seems so right in front of their face and obvious. Why do you think that is?
I honestly believe it's so that we don't scare people to the point that they're not willing to move forward with the vaccination. I know you know that I've kind of documented my journey, and it was quite a while before I even brought the vaccination up. And I did that purposely because number one, it's not hard to see. I'm African American. And if I start, I didn't want my friends and my family members to start thinking that, oh no, this is not what I want to do. I only brought it up when I was finally frustrated that they wouldn't report it, because then I'm thinking, okay, now I have a responsibility. I can't tell you who this affects, but I can tell you that it's affecting people. And again, the last thing that I wanted to do was to start having anyone become hesitant to receive their vaccination. For example, when this happened to me, my son still needed to take his second shot, and the 2 weeks. I was maybe 2 or 3 days in the hospital, and I called him and told him, take your shot. Do not allow what's going on with me to dissuade you, because I don't believe that this is going to happen to you. But to answer your question, as a collective, we're trying to keep the amount of fear down. And I get that. But is this the best way to do it? Because if this starts to happen to more than 2%, maybe 5, maybe 10% of people, how much the risk of thinking that we'll have enough people vaccinated before this gets out, I I I think that's so irresponsible, extremely irresponsible.
We need to look at this and see, we need to study it, see what the ramifications are, but also see the level of percentage of harm that this, what's the reality on this? So how do you balance, how do you hold both of those?
Well, I'm holding both of those because we're on a thin line. We've seen what COVID has done to us as a nation, as a world, and now we have a solution. But that solution may not necessarily be of benefit to everyone. But I also think, okay, in the back of my head, what if I'd have gotten COVID? Because along the lines of the vaccination, we can't eliminate COVID here. So what would have happened to me if I got COVID? Would I have lived? Because there is something different about me and the group of people that I've met. So trying to balance those two things out, again, I still feel that vaccinating people is what we should be doing.
How about kids?
By no means should we be vaccinating kids. One, we've already proven that COVID is not as detrimental to children. And when we get down to children that aren't even of speaking age, how would you even know what a baby's going through? There's no way, you're going to wait till they're 12 and they're not walking. No, that's totally irresponsible. And just in our case, with the group that we know, maybe there's only one 12-year-old out of the 1,000 that were in the test, but that's one. How many more do we have to have before we put the brakes on this? I do not think that we should be vaccinating children, especially under 12 years old. They don't have a voice. They don't have a comparison as to this is how life should be, and now this is what I have. The for the elderly, the life call, help, I've fallen, I can't get up. How do you tell a kid who's kicking a ball 1 minute and the next minute they've fallen? You can't just tell them, well, just call life call, they'll help you. They're not even going to be able to process this. So we've had COVID and them being isolated, and we're all wondering what's going to happen to our children and how it's affected them. Well, now we start vaccinating them, and then they get the adverse effects. I don't see where that is any balance at all.
Is there anything you want to say that I didn't cover, or that you want to use your voice to share?
The only thing that I can think of, and it's something that I continually say, and it's for me personally, that I'm not going to give up and I'm not going to shut up. If somebody asks me the question, I'm going to talk and I'm going to use my voice to interject what I think that's going on. And as we get more concrete information and we get more understanding, I will continue to be an advocate for whatever we're going to call this. So I guess that's how I'm going to end it. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to give up, and I'm not going to shut up. I continue to say that in the hospital, and they quickly got me out of the first hospital. So we'll see where this takes me. And again, I thank you for the opportunity. Hopefully, something that I've said can resonate with someone who has the power to move us into the next step, to help us get the help that we need.
Well, Candace, thank you so much for your time.